Alright, this is John Kohler with DiscountJuicers.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you. In this episode, I'm going to share with you guys the 2 best ways to juice in 2025. According to me, John Kohler, the #1 world's juicer expert, I've compared and contrasted and unboxed and tested more juicers than anybody else on the planet. If somebody has tested more than me, let me know because I'd love to pick their brain. But as you guys can see on my YouTube channel, I have over 800 episodes where I go deep into juicing and comparing juicers and other equipment so you can process fruits and vegetables in the best ways possible. Nonetheless, earlier in this year, 2025, I made a video, the best way to juice in 2025, link down below to that video, where I share that vacuum blending is the best way to juice in 2025, as well as when I first started talking about it many years ago. The reason for that is because it gets the highest yield, the driest pulp, and has a relatively low barrier of entry. It's relatively inexpensive to buy a vacuum blender setup like this and the Alexis bags, right? That being said, I know a lot of you guys, that's like too much work. I'm not going to hand squeeze the bags out, John, that's gross, and all these things. And so, you know, if you want the most nutrition and highest yield, you definitely got to go with vacuum juicing. No other juicer can compare in terms of yield and nutrition at the same time. Of course, there are other juices on the market that may cost $2,500 or more that'll get a very high yield, but in my opinion, leaves nutrients stuck in the pulp. That being said, on the flip side, we want to take it to the other extreme, right? This is an involved process. Some people just don't want to literally get their hands dirty or spend a lot of time juicing, but know the inherent benefit of drinking fresh, especially vegetable juices and leafy green juices for their health. So they want to get juice in them. And unfortunately, many people just buy pasteurized or even high pressure pasteurized juices in the store and drink those, which tend to be actually very high in fruits or sugar, which in my opinion is not the best thing. So that, on the other hand, that's why I'm going to share with you guys the Hurom H70. While it doesn't get the highest yield, right, doesn't make the most nutrition in the juice, it still makes a very good quality juice using low RPM because it is a slow juicer. And in addition, this machine, you literally load up the hopper, shut the lid, and you could walk away, let the juicer juice without you. And when you come back and you're done, you have a glass of juice, glass of pulp, and then you could spray this down without any scrubbing in your sink for about 60 seconds, which is how long it takes me. And you could be done juicing and have your fresh juice. So that's the conundrum, guys. Do you want the most highest yield, highest nutrient quality, don't mind some physical work, or do you guys just want it easy, right? And that's what I want to share with you guys today. I have a lot of videos comparing and contrasting juicers, and here's the thing. Every different juicer or juicing method has its own sets of pros and cons. I'm here to dispel the myths and share with you guys the truth and share with you guys, like, through actual real-world demonstrations, you know, where I show you the full process. You know, I don't want to shortchange you guys and do some kind of 7-minute edited video that gets pushed out to YouTube and gets millions of views, you know, but then creators are basically hiding, in my opinion, the truth from you. So I'm here to give you guys the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So help me, cucumber. All right. So I guess before we get into this actual video where I'm going to be juicing the exact same amounts of items in both machines so you guys can see the exact time it takes, the process it takes, also how much juice it makes, we're going to throw up this graph right here on the screen for you guys, because this basically graph sums it up. This is what you guys are going to learn in the long format. If you guys don't want the long format, you could stop after this short format. Anyways, we're going to compare vacuum juicing using a Blendtec plus a vacuum lid by Void Systems to a slow juicer, the Hurom H70, which is the Easy Clean, which is the juicer I prefer to use in my home because it is so easy to clean. I literally spray it off. There's no more scrubbing or anything, and cleaning is a breeze. So I really look forward to cleaning the juicer when I'm done versus like dreading cleaning the juicer because I got to scrub all these parts clean, okay? Anyways, let's go ahead and compare these two in terms of oxygen exposure. This also is going to cause oxidation of your juice. So for example, when you vacuum juice, you're removing 75% of the oxygen from the carafe before processing the ingredients. This is very important. So you literally have 25% left of the oxygen that would have been normal atmospheric conditions. That will, of course, significantly lessen the oxidation. There are published studies that show when you blend versus vacuum blend apples, for example, polyphenol content could be twice as much, right? This is why even using a slow juicer, you have 100% oxygen because you're just grinding in atmospheric conditions where oxygen is all around. And although this is running at a low RPM, so it's not introducing a lot, oxygen is still being introduced, okay? I do want to comment too on the heat, but John, the blenders heat up. So here's the thing. If you run a blender for like 2 minutes, it can get a soup steaming if you have a high power blender. That being said, running it for 30 to 45 seconds or under a minute, which is the amount of time you'll need to vacuum blend your mixture to be doing the vacuum juicing, will not create any significant amount of heat, all right? And so, in my opinion, oxidation is much more worse to nutrition quality than heat is. You've been fed, a lot of people have been, especially people that sell slow juicers and all these things, keep repeating a dogma and myth that, high-speed juicers heat the juice. And in my testing, I have not found this to be true. Nonetheless, processing. This is also very important. The vacuum juicing does multiple hits on the produce. There's a funnel vortex that's running all the produce continually back into the blade that fractionates up and opens up cell walls more effectively than a slow juicer where you put the produce in, it goes through a single pass on the auger, grinds, spits out the grind, and the juice comes out, right? This leaves a more coarse texture in the pulp instead of a fine texture in the pulp. When you have a finer texture in the pulp, more nutrients are released and, exposed out of the fibrous cell walls that are basically binding up all the nutrients. Next up, nutrition. So the vacuum juicing will retain better nutrition preservation due to the oxygen, number one, being removed from the container, number two, better grinding capability to release all those nutrients. So you're releasing the most nutrients and they're not getting oxidized. Meanwhile, in the Hurom H70, you're doing a one-pass grind, leaving more coarse fiber, but it's done at a low RPM, but nonetheless, there's more oxygen being introduced into the grinding process in a slow juicer than even a vacuum juicing blender, okay? Next up on juice yield, of course, you can't beat vacuum juicing for yield. You're going to get yield comparable to a $2,500 juice press, such as a Norwalk juicer. And on the Hurom, it's going to be really good, of course, because Hurom literally invented slow juicing. They've been in business now for 50 years, but, of course, this will leave a wetter pulp. That is one of the downsides of using a slow juicer. Of course, depending on what you're juicing, the pulp may be more wet or more dry. Okay? Ease of use. Which one of these two methods of juicing is easier? Well, I'm not going to fib you. I want you guys to know the truth. The H70 is the easiest way to juice. That's why at home I tend to use the H70 most. And it's, not too often that I actually will vacuum juice for myself because it's just a larger process and it takes a lot longer to make more quantities of juice because you got to do like one carafe at a time. Whereas with this, you could continually feed it, load it, and I've made like 8 quarts at a time with this machine in no time flat, right? So once again, what is really important to you? So yeah, the vacuum juicing is more complex. You got to cut the produce, you got to pulse the blender, then you got to hand squeeze it out. Whereas on the slow juicer, it's very easy. You literally cut some of the produce up to fill the hopper, shut the lid, turn it on, walk away. And the juicing is done literally for you without ya. And then of course at the end you got to clean both of them. So the Hurom H70 is more of a hands-off automated operation, whereas the vacuum juicing is the most hands-on operation of any juicing method out there. Okay, the time. The vacuum juicing will take more time overall from pre-cutting, vacuum blending, and then hand squeezing, which can take a lot of time, versus the Hurom H70. Put everything in, it juices on its own while you're doing something else. So while it is taking time, it's not taking your time, sitting there watching it or actively doing something, okay? Of course, cleaning. Cleaning for the Hurom H70 is 60 seconds. This is the claim to fame. There's no other juicer that gets as high of a yield in a vertical hopper style format as the Hurom H70 that I've ever tested to date, right? 60-second cleaning. That being said, cleaning a vacuum blender carafe is not that hard. You could rinse it out, scrub it a little bit. It's cleaning the bag. I do scrub that a little bit. It's more than definitely rinsing it out. That could take 2 to 3 times longer than the Hurom H70. Nonetheless, this could be a lot easier than cleaning some of the other juicers that are out there. And then, of course, versatility with the vacuum blender. Besides doing vacuum juicing when you buy the Alexa's bags, you could also make smoothies in it, sorbets in it. I make salad dressings in my blender. I make blended soups in my blender. I make blended salads in my blender. I make nut butters in my blender, all without oxygen, right? So really the blender has a lot more versatility than simply a juicer. The Hurom H70 is made to juice, although it also can make frozen fruit sorbets. Link down below to my original unboxing video where I make a frozen fruit sorbet in the Hurom H70. It could also make nut milks. That being said, I would recommend actually using a vacuum blender to make the nut milks using the Alexa's bags as well. It makes the best nut milk compared to any other method I've tested. And of course, how much does each one of these cost? So, here's the other thing, guys. Getting a used Blendtec motor base off eBay for $50 to $100, buying a new blender carafe for maybe, $150, if that, and buying the blender top for about $200, less my $25 off coupon I'll share with you guys in a minute, is cheaper than buying the whole entire Hurom. What you guys are paying for when you guys buy a Hurom is you're paying for a full 15-year warranty, which is a lot longer than any of the individual parts on the Blendtec blender itself. In addition, you're paying for quality. This is a quality machine made of quality parts that will last a long time. Of course, also Hurom invented the slow juicer, so they have the state-of-the-art technology sold in their machines, but not in other brands. And of course, I think at the end, you're really paying for convenience. Convenience to be able to load the hopper up, put everything in there, walk away, let the juicer work without you, right? How much would you pay for an automated juicing assistant, right? You got to pay by the hour, whereas the Hurom, it's a one-time investment. It's going to juice without you so that you can do other more important things in life if having the most yield and nutrition is not paramount for you. All right, so yeah, that's the summary. And if you guys want to stop here and buy either of these two machines, that's great. Let's see, I don't have an affiliation with Blendtec. I do recommend actually you get a used Blendtec from a few years ago versus the ones that are being made today, brand new. Blendtec has changed their manufacturing process, and from what I'm being told, they're being manufactured no longer in the United States, which is sad. Whereas when I visited the factory back in 2020, they are made in the USA. So I'd recommend getting a few years old Blendtec blender base with a low cycle count, and then also getting a brand new wild side jar, and then couple that with the Void's system lid, which is right here. You could buy that at void-system.com. Make sure you guys use a coupon code DJ25 to save you guys $25 off the vacuum lid that'll turn any Blendtec blender into a vacuum blender. So if you guys want to buy the Hurom H70, make sure you guys use a coupon code EasyJuice. That's EasyJuice. We'll throw it up right there at Hurom.com. That'll save you guys a minimum of 10% off the Hurom H70 so that you could juice how I juice in my home and have the easiest amount of cleaning. When you guys use the coupon codes that I previously mentioned, each of the companies will share a small commission with me so I can continue to make these educational videos for you guys, spend my time to do this, as well as more importantly, buy the produce that I'll be juicing today, pay my video editor who does an amazing job, as well as pay my utility bill and all my other expenses in life. Now, finally, I want to say that if you do want to vacuum juice, you will need these Alexa's juice bags, which are available at alexasbags.com. They come in a 2-pack. They have a 1-year replacement guarantee. These are welded in the United States, made of BPA-free material. They are certified BPA safe. They have no areas for string channels and for, pulp to get clogged into, and they have nice rounded corners, and they're oversized. The only bags I recommend, and the best bags that I found on the entire market. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and dive deep in the comparison between vacuum blending and slow juicing in detail. All right, so first up, I want to do a sound test because this also may be of importance to some people. You know, of course, some people, sound may be the most important thing. They don't care about nutrient quality. For some people, they want the most nutrition, highest yield. And, you know, that's why I make these videos so that you guys can see on all the different specific areas which one of these machines will meet your specific needs, you know. So let's go ahead and turn on the Hurom H70, see how loud this is. We're peaking out at 69 decibels. That's actually quite quiet. Now we're just going to go ahead and ramp up the Blendtec here. Alright guys, the blender is empty, so it's going to be a little bit louder. And this is peaking out, guys, at 100 decibels. This will make you go deaf, so definitely I recommend wearing some hearing protection when running the blender. So, you know, if noise is a big problem, well, hey, then they got vacuum blenders that have sound enclosures and stuff. But, you know, the thing is, blenders will always be louder than any slow juicer, especially when they run super slow, like 60 revolutions per minute in the case of the Hurom H70. All right, so next up what we want to compare is actually how the grinding process works on each of these two machines, because that's a very important factor. And, you know, so what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and take apart the Hurom H70. And this is basically a hopper that you load up with the produce. This processing blade spins around, pre-cuts to some extent the produce you put in here, drops it down into this hole, which then goes into the juicing apparatus, which is right here. So, you know, the reason why I love the Hurom H70 is because they've literally deleted the stainless steel juicing screen that comes with basically all other juicers on the market, right? This has a auger, a two-piece auger actually, and you can see when I take this apart, it's two pieces. What happens is this auger goes together, and then what happens is as you put as the produce drops into this processing area, the produce is squeezed between the auger and the bowl here. So you can see on the outside of the bowl, they have some ribbing inside the bowl, these little lines that go down, and basically the produce is kind of trapped between these grinding lines and the lines on the auger. So basically it kind of gets ground up. As the produce is going through that are low and slow 60 revolutions per minute, the produce gets grind up, cut between the different grinding points, and then juice is released from the produce. Then the juice then falls in between the cracks. So you can see I can take this apart. There's large cracks, but even when I put this together, the spacing in between these parts makes some cracks, which then the juice falls into. The juice comes out the middle here, which then ends up going out this juice spout here into your collection cup. Meanwhile, all the pulp then gets funneled down to the outside of this bowl, down to this little part where it actually comes out the pulp ejection chute right there. So you guys can see that when this runs at a low and slow 60 RPMs, the produce gets basically ground up, goes through the machine as much as it's ground up. Then at some point, it's ground no further, it gets kicked out, and whatever juice comes out is what comes out, right? So that's how this works, right? And yeah, this is how a lot of slow juicers work. You know, if slow juicers had a better grinding or a longer run to extract more juice, that could be more beneficial and get a higher yield and higher nutrient quality. So next up, let's explain how juicing is done in a vacuum blender. First off, of course, you have the main blender carafe. This is not rocket science. This is a standard Blendtec blender carafe that has the 5 sides, so it tends to agitate things more. Actually got knocked off by Vitamix, and Vitamix was sued by Blendtec, and Blendtec actually won the lawsuit. Nonetheless, what happens on this, how the produce is ground up in this, instead of going one time through and getting it ground up, basically plastic on plastic, right? What happens in here, the main grinding apparatus is a blade. And the blade here is a lot sharper, in my personal opinion, and you could actually cut your fingers on some blades of some blenders, so don't put your fingers on your blades. Whereas you can't cut your fingers on this. Meaning that because the blade is sharper, also it is metal against produce versus plastic on produce. Metal is much harder material than the plastic, so it basically could grind up and shred better than the plastic on plastic. In addition, when you're running the blender, right, the produce is in the blender, it gets ground up, and then the blender creates a vortex. So now the produce is in, it goes up, it comes back down, it hits the blades again, and then comes up, it hits the blades again. The longer you run the blender, the more it gets broken down to a certain point, you know. At a certain point, it's the point of no longer being ground up, right? So you want to grind it enough to get the finest grind, but not have it too coarse, right? If you continue to grind after you get to the finest grind, the blender can't really get it any finer. At that point, you'll be probably excessively blending, which then can lower nutrition content, right? And I know you're thinking, John, why do I have to use a vacuum blender? Because I could use my regular blender to make a juice without the vacuum lid, right? Because then I'll still have the better grinding. Okay, so yes, you're right, you're smart for thinking about this, but the main issue with just blending in a blender to get a better grind without the vacuum, because what this does is when you put this on, you turn it on, and you press the go button, you can hear dual pumps come on, and literally what's happening is the excess oxygen is being sucked out of the carafe. Maybe like 75% of the oxygen is literally being evacuated from the carafe before you blend. This ensures that you have minimal oxidation happening to the food as it's being ground up, right? If you don't have the vacuum lid and you're just blending it up, you're bringing in air every single time the produce hits the blades, and every time this produce is hitting the blades, right, and being broken open, you're injecting micro bubbles and air into the food. That's why when you're done blending in a regular blender, you know, your level goes up and you actually didn't create food out of thin air. You basically super oxygenated or add a lot of air bubbles to your food, which then screws up the texture of the food because now it's all gloopy. It also doesn't stay fresh as long. And also, you know, polyphenols can be reduced by half and maybe even more depending on the specific food you are blending up, right? So that's why I don't recommend blending without the vacuum, because you're adding in significantly more air than even a slow juicer. Because if you thought the slow juicer added in air, this is running at 60 RPMs, blender could run in excess of 20,000 RPMs, right? That's super quick, depending on the speed you are running it at, right? So you're introducing significant amounts of air. That's why I only recommend using a vacuum blender that sucks out the oxygen before you blend, of course. So yeah, you can see how this is more effective at grinding to a final particle size that I'll demonstrate in a minute. So after you're done blending, the next step is you're gonna have to use Alexa's bags. So we got one right here, and this is Alexa's bags. What you're gonna do is you're gonna take the mixture that you just blended up and ground down to the finest particle size and put it through the world's best juice bag. This is Alexa's bag. And unlike a lot of press cloths on two-stage juicers that have very fine pore size that you can't look through, you could actually see through this. You know, this is like maybe like a pantyhose texture for women. I don't know what the equivalent for men is. But basically you could see through this. So when you could see through the holes in Alexa's bags, that means the holes are a little bit larger. If the holes were a lot tighter and closer together, you wouldn't be able to see through it like press cloths on the Norwalk juicer and other cold press juicers that, you know, where you're pressing it out. This is really the key, guys. You guys don't understand this. Because the hole size is larger, it allows more nutrients that were bound to the fiber to pass through the cloth. But because it is not too big, it doesn't leave chunks of fiber in your juice. That's very important. You know, the distinction on this juicer is that if it fits between these cracks right here between, and then it ends up in your juice, which could also leave some pulp in your juice, whereas this is basically just going to leave the juice plus the most amount of nutrition due to the pore size being the exact right size, right? Not too small, not too large, okay? So yeah, that's the other reason why the vacuum juicing extracts more juice, because using the best pore size. And also the other thing is, you know, while the machine is basically pressing the plastic against plastic to literally press out the juice, in this method, you are actually using your hand strength or hand power to literally squeeze out the juice. blending and grinding up the juice on one level to extract a level of nutrition, but I was also seeing by extracting force and now basically by squeezing the produce, you can squeeze out even more nutrition, than just the grinding alone. So that will play a small factor in how much nutrition you're going to get. So yeah, this is the best I know after my 30 years, juicing myself, trying to explain to you guys why the vacuum juicing, in my opinion, is a much more superior method to juice than using even a slow juicer, which was state of the art before I discovered vacuum juicing, thanks to Tom Dixon. I was aware about vacuum blending due to a trade show I visited back in 2017, which I have a video on, link down below to that if I remember. But then I was not aware of vacuum juicing because I always thought juicing with a blender is stupid because you oxidize the food too much. But then I visited Blendtec, and for the first time I had Tom Dixon show me about vacuum juicing celery, and I brought my best slow juicer up there, and I compared slow juicing versus vacuum juicing. First time I drank the vacuum juice celery juice, I was like, oh shoot, what am I going to do? This is clearly a better way to juice than a slow juicer. Gets the pulp drier, gets the highest yield, gets the most nutrition, makes a better, fresher, cleaning tasting juice that's minimally oxidized. Like, I got to tell people about it. So to this day, I tell people about vacuum juicing, even though it's not very popular. People don't know what it is because I'm like the only guy telling you guys about it because I want you guys to know the truth, right? Other channels will just sit there and try to sell you juicers all day. I'm here to give you guys the most options. Whether you guys want the easiest juicer option or whether you guys want the juicer option that's going to get you the highest yield and highest nutrition, because that is what you're after. All right, so these are the basics. I guess I want to get the machines built up and ready to juice, and we're going to go ahead and do a produce weigh-in to make sure we have a fair juice-off comparison. So as you guys can see, we're all set up and ready to juice, and we're doing a produce weigh-in to make sure we have a fair comparison. We got a 1064.4 on both scales. We have a combination of one large hothouse-grown English cucumber, some organic celery, half of a lemon, one envy apple, organic and fresh picked kale out of my garden that I'll be juicing today in both juicing methods. So let's go ahead and get the scales out of the way and let's get juicing. All right guys, so in this episode, because I have to basically prepare the produce to get juiced in the vacuum juicer, I'll start the clock actually when I start preparing the produce for the Hurom H70 as well. So we have like an apples to apples comparison. So I think the first step is we're just going to go ahead and take all the produce items and set it here on my cutting board so I can pre-cut them up. We're going to go ahead and then put our juice catch container under the spout. I'm also going to be using a sieve today. Otherwise, the Hurom would actually put more pulp in the juice, which would then artificially inflate the yield. So I like to strain it out to make sure we have a fair fight. I guess the next step is we simply have to turn the start button on. I'm going to start cutting up the produce, load it into the Hurom H70, turn the machine on, and then that's literally all I have to do to juice in the Hurom H70. The Hurom H70 makes it incredibly easy to juice due to not only just the hopper, but also the easy cleaning process when you're done. So let's get started. All right, once you got the hopper loaded up, shut the lid, turn it on, and now the juicer is going to be juicing without you. So as you can see, some of the produce is already dropped down in the hopper. Juice is starting to come out. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and continue to fill up the hopper until it's done, and then I don't have to do any more work. So we're going to speed this part of the video up for you guys to save you guys some time. Alright guys, so juicing in the Hurom H70 is coming to an end. You will know when it's done when the pulp stops moving out of the ejection port as well as the juice stops dripping out. We're going to let it run just a little bit longer, but I did want to comment. So the thing is, I basically had to pre-cut the produce a little bit just so I could more maximally fill it up in the hopper. And then that took about a minute or two. And then I basically shut the lid and then was able to walk away, let the juicer do all the work. And then I could come back and I'm going to stop it at about 5.5 minutes. The juicer is pretty much done. And you have a juice with literally like a minute or two at maximum invested in the total juicing process at this point. At the end, I have about 1 minute to clean. So literally, I made like 500 milliliters of juice or 16 ounces of juice, literally with like 2 to 3 minutes of work max, guys, that actually I had to do. Yes, the juicer did have to run more, but you don't have to be here when it is running. It's fully automated, fully automatic, and it's gonna, allow you to juice when you could do and focus on other things that are maybe more important in your life than getting the exact highest quantity and straining out juice, as I will do right now through vacuum juicing. All right, guys, so up next, we're gonna do the vacuum juicing process. The vacuum juicing process definitely is more intricate than the juicing with the RH70. You need to properly pre-cut the items and load up the produce items into the vacuum blender properly, or you may not get good results and it may not work at all actually for you. I personally don't like to add any water or other liquids to my blender when vacuum juicing. That is why I am basically cutting up water-rich produce such as the cucumber and the celery into small bits, so that as soon as I start to turn on the blender, that will turn into the liquid that will then suck in some of the other ingredients and get everything blended up. This could be made a lot easier if you just wanted to add in some filtered water, coconut water, even some kind of pre-bought, store-bought juice, to use as a liquid, so that you didn't have to pre-cut as small as I am cutting right now. But this is the way I want to juice, because I don't want to dilute my juice with additional water or change its nutritional quality due to adding other foreign things besides just the fruits and vegetables themselves. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and turn on the stopwatch, and I'm going to explain to you guys the process and exactly what I'm doing and how. All right, so hit start. First, we want to get the most watery produce item. In this case, that is this oversized English cucumber. So I'm going to basically slice it down the lengthwise like 3 times. And then I'm going to turn it to the other side, maybe just like slice it once down the middle. And then I'm going to basically just chop it up into little pieces, right? It's very important you cut up the produce into little pieces so that it can turn into water, get hit by the blades when you turn on the vacuum blender, all right? This is not super rocket science, not super hard. You want to cut it in just little small bits. All right, now we're going to go ahead and start loading up the blender carafe. Using the smallest bits first. You definitely don't want to pack them in there too tight. The cucumber is quite watery, so this will turn into liquid when you start blending. All right, next up, we're going to go ahead now and take the celery and cut this into little pieces. I'll cut it in half once and then line them all up. And then I'll basically just cut them into little slices. The cucumber is going to be the primary water in this recipe today, although I have done this also using celery as a primary water. You need to use basically some kind of water-rich fruits or vegetables. You can't do this with like carrots. Cutting carrots as small as you can, this will not work because carrot does not have a liquid content as compared to the fiber content. All right, so you guys can see we easily got this celery chopped up. This is a lot more manual labor, guys. I mean, we're here 2 minutes in. We've done nothing but chop, and we haven't even started juicing yet. All right, next up, I'm going to go ahead and take the kale. Just rip the kale in half once, rip it in half a second time. Then I'm going to basically line this up on the cutting board and slice this up as well. Now we can put this into the vacuum blender as well. As you can see, we're loading up the capacity of this vacuum blender. And this is the wild side jar with a 56-ounce carafe. I like to use this because it has a large carafe size. Other vacuum blenders may be significantly smaller, so they may not be the best for vacuum juicing, although you could vacuum juice in it. Once again, we are cutting up the apple into smaller-ish pieces as well, so it'll get easier processed. I personally don't mind juicing the apple seeds, although they do contain cyanide, so you may want to remove them if you are not comfortable with it. I rarely juice apples, that being said. All right, so we got our lemon in there. So once we got everything pre-cut and ready to go, next step is we could put our lid on. That alone, just pre-cutting the produce, took me 3 minutes, guys. That's the overall elapsed time you would have to make a juice in the Huron. right? Including the cleaning. And I'm still working on this. Hit the go button. As you guys can see, the number is increasing. The oxygen is being sucked out of the container. Next up, we now have our 2-quart Anchor Hocking measuring bowl. We're gonna go ahead and then take our Alexis bag and line this up to get ready to pour our mixture through it so we can strain it out. All right, we've achieved maximum vacuum. This looks like to be around 17 or 18. Maybe we'll let it run a little bit longer. I do like to try to get this up to 16 to 18. It's currently at 17. Of course, the higher it goes, the longer it'll take, and at some point, the number just will not go any higher. This will depend on your specific altitude. Closer to the sea level, it will go to a higher number, and if you're up at higher altitude, there's more resistance on the pump, so it will not go as high. It looks like I'm stable at 17, so we're just gonna go ahead and start blending at this point. So the first step is we're just gonna go ahead and hit the pulse. You can see I'm getting all the cucumbers turn into liquid. Everything is starting to drop in. We're not really creating any significant amounts of heat. Alright, once I got everything starting to go, I could press hold juice button and let it blend automatically without me. Alright, so as you guys can see, it did a great job blending that entire mixture up. Next step is we're going to go ahead and take the carafe off, and now we're going to go ahead and let the air back in. So we just, we're able to grind up and blend to the finest particle size with 75% of the oxygen removed. Next up, we're just going to go ahead and take a spatula and spatula off all this blended smoothie mixture into our Alexis bags. Now, you're thinking, John, why don't you just drink the smoothie that you made? Well, this is going to be very thick, guys. It's going to have a texture that many of you guys may not like. In addition, published studies show that if you take some of the insoluble fiber, at the same time, this can hinder absorption of certain nutrients, and you'll get actually higher absorption of certain nutrients when you remove the impediment of the digestion from some of the fiber. Not to say that fiber is not important for us. Besides juicing, I do recommend making blended smoothies, also eating fresh fruits and fresh vegetables like in salads. Also, I do steaming and putting in the Instant Pot or pressure cooking of my vegetables as well, because we want to eat these plant foods processed in many different ways for all the different benefits, because every different method you process a food will get a certain uptake of certain nutrients more or less. So some are better absorbed juice, some are better absorbed blended, some are better absorbed in the raw state, some are better absorbed when they are heat processed and cooked. All right, so we got all our mixture out of the blender. The next step is we're simply going to go ahead and squeeze all the juice out. So let's go ahead and do that. As you can see now, we're already at 8 minutes, guys. This is even a lot longer than it took just to use the Hurom H70. It would have been well done, clean by now, and out the door, ready for a day. Of course, some of you guys are retired. Some of you guys have all the time in the world. Some of you guys aren't busy. Some of you guys don't want to squeeze out the juice because working with your hands and food products is nasty, and you'd rather buy something prepackaged, made by machine. So I'd say we want to put the love back in our food and intention back in our food. You might want to meditate while you're squeezing. I mean, this is really a nice texture in your hands. Also, too, because you are squeezing this out, make sure you have clean hands, of course. You are going to get some benefits from the phytonutrients in your skin contact, because our skin can actually absorb nutrition. All right, nonetheless, we're at 9 minutes now. Let's go ahead and continue to squeeze. I'm getting close to the end. You got to be careful. If you squeeze too hard, it's going to splash everywhere. All right, guys, so there's at a point where you could squeeze so much and you could get like 2 more drops, which I could probably squeeze a bit harder and get 2 more drops, but I think I'm pretty much done, because at this point, I'm exerting a lot of effort to not get a lot of juice. Of course, you could have stopped a lot earlier. You know, the earlier you stop, the more wet your pulp is, but still the pulp's gonna be significantly more dry than the Huram in all cases, all right? So, as you can see, stop. Vacuum juicing, guys, took a total of 10 minutes, whereas in the Huram H70, oh, and I still got cleaning of like 2 to 3 minutes. So maybe 13 minutes total. This is active work, except for when it was blending on its own for about a minute. Whereas on the Huram, in 3 minutes, including cleaning, because you prep for about 2 minutes, clean it for a minute, and you're out the door. 3 minutes total versus 13 or 12 minutes total, including cleaning. Active time you're actually working, doing something. Now, yes, physical activity is quite important. I encourage you guys to get some physical activity, including squeezing juice bags, walking, or other kind of exercises every day is a very important component of health, and I think people these days are just too lazy. All right, so now let's compare and see what we got after using each extraction method. All right, guys, so before we compare the juices, I want to compare the pulps because this is pretty significant difference, okay? So we got a tray here, and first we're going to go ahead and take the pulp out of the Huram H70. And to remind you guys, you know, the pulp that comes in the pulp bin is just the pulp that comes out in the pulp bin. There's still pulp stuck in the juicer, as well as the hopper. I did not try to push things down in the hopper because I just want to see the actual real-world comparison. So what we're going to do here off camera is we're going to go ahead and remove all the pulp from the hopper, which there's a few bits that actually did not get juiced. You know, there's some random pulp around the edges here. And there's a whole bunch of pulp inside there. So I'm going to go ahead and fish all this out and make sure I get it on the tray. All right, guys, so I was able to fish out all the pulp from the juicer as much as I could. There's a few bits still left in there. And then this is the pulp from the juicer inside and the pulp container. Now, the pulp we are also going to count is the pulp that is still in the sieve, right? I want to compare apples to apples here. This is a fine juice because it went through the press cloth. This juice has a lot more pulp in it. This will artificially inflate the yield. So I've tapped this down a bunch, and you guys can see this pulp is a lot more wet. We'll just kind of try to put it off to the corner there. And you guys can see what it really looks like right there. And if we look at this pulp, you can see, I mean, there is literally strings of celery that did not get broken down, right? If we look closely, you guys can see bits of apple skin. You know, and a lot of nutrition in the apple, in my opinion, is actually in the skin. So we want to break down the skin as much as possible. And once again, because we're just going through a single pass-through, grinding plastic on plastic, pieces of whole skin come out. You know, of course, there is some residue left in the hopper of things that, you know, are little bits that just did not get ground up. You know, there was not a lot of that. But nonetheless, this pulp is a very coarse pulp, you know. I could see, you know, just there's a lot of strings and a lot of pieces you could identify, like, oh, this is a piece of the cucumber, right? You could totally see it because it's all not broken down that well and really large, right? So let's kind of try to move this over a little bit, and let's go ahead and see how the vacuum juicing did in Alexa's bag. So I'll basically just shake this down, then I'll basically flick this because it kind of gets stuck to the side. Try to get as much out as I possibly can here. All right, guys, so I've done the best I can trying to get it all off the sides of the bag because it is stuck on there. And we're going to go ahead and carefully pour out the pulp from the vacuum blending onto this tray here. All right, guys, so you guys can see the difference now? Like, which one is truly broken down, right? I barely see any celery strings. And, you know, I can pick out some bits of apple skin, but it's very hard. I could see like, oh, here's a piece of apple skin. It's like a little dot versus, you know, maybe like a lot larger pieces of apple skin over on the Huram side. Of course, the pulp that came out of the sieve was the wettest. And this pulp, I mean, I could not squeeze any drier. So it's significantly drier. So really want to give you guys a close-up on that so you guys could see the difference in how well it grinds up, right? Published studies show that the finer you grind up cell walls and blow open things, you extract more nutrition, especially when you're breaking down some of the different polyphenol fibers and nutrients in the skin that, you know, the Huram was not as effective as the vacuum blender, all right? Next up, what I want to do for you guys is I want to weigh out the pulp. So we weighed the produce going in, and we're going to weigh out the pulp. Once again, you know, I tried to get all the pulp out of both machines. In this case, you know, it's easy to get the pulp out because after I blended, I just spooned it all into my bag, which then I squeezed out. So first up, we're going to go ahead and weigh the pulp that came out of the vacuum juicing here. So now we're going to go ahead and weigh the pulp. First up, we're going to weigh the pulp out of the vacuum juicer. So we're going to tear this out. So we got 0 on the scale, as you guys can see, and we're going to carefully put all the pulp from vacuum juicing in this little container. All right, guys, so this is absolutely insane. I mean, you're really not going to get this performance anywhere unless you spend like $2,500 on some kind of juicer. Literally, we had over 1,000 grams of produce going in, and we literally have 90 grams coming out. This is like decreased by a significant amount, guys, at like a 10 times reduction. So, you know, this is literally, guys, the most extraction you guys are going to get. Yes, it did take a lot of time, a lot of work and effort, but you have the most juice, the driest pulp, right? The most nutrition, grind up the finest particle size without the oxidation damage of normal atmospheric conditions. All right. Next up, let's go ahead and weigh out the Huron pulp. Let's go ahead and 0 out our bowl here. And let's go ahead and put all this pulp into the bowl. All right, guys, I got all the pulp in there. This is insane, guys. It's 284.9 grams of pulp. So this is maybe a 1/4 reduction. I mean, approximately, because we had over 1,000 at first. But 284.9, say 285 versus 90 grams, guys. This is like literally 3 times wetter pulp that is not broken down as much in the Huron. But once again, right, you want easy, you want convenient, the Huron is it. This is probably not really unique out of other slow juicers, right? Other slow juicers may get a similar wetness in the pulp, but they'll be a lot harder to clean. And that's really what you guys are getting when you guys do vacuum juicing, which is really a superior way to juice that most people don't understand. This is why I tell you guys about it, and I'm not here just to hide behind and, oh, vacuum juicing doesn't exist. I'm just going to promote a juicer because every other influencer does. No, I'm the different guy that really wants you guys to know the truth, that's passionate about this. And yes, I want you guys to know the full process. Yes, it took freaking 13 minutes to do this process. But I know there's some of you guys that are crazy like me that'll do it, you know, and do it every time, and you won't be hindered by the process because you know you got the driest freaking pulp, you know, the pulp that tastes like nothing, and the most nutritious juice, right? So next up, let's go ahead and compare the juice yield and see how much more juice we made using vacuum juicing instead of slow juicing. All right, next up, guys, let's go ahead and compare the juices. These larger glass measuring cups don't really have good like measurements on there, so you can't see it easily, so I'm going to transfer it. But before I do, I really want you guys to notice the color of these two juices. Can you guys notice the color of these two juices, right? Which one is darker, right? It's a no-brainer. Vacuum juicing is darker. Why is vacuum juicing darker? Vacuum juicing broke up the cell walls more effectively, released more chlorophyll into the juice, so now you get more bioavailability, better ability, because you basically broken up the cell walls more effectively and 3 times more dry than the Huron H70, which you guys could see this juice, you know, is, you know, a lot lighter in color. Also, this is a more homogeneous juice because you did put it through the fine sieve, whereas this has a bit more different particulate sizes that will separate. I am not the guy that's going to say separation of juice is bad, like some companies out there will tell you guys. Separation just shows you different particle sizes. I would say you have a more uniform particle size in the vacuum juicing because you grind it to the finest particle size. You put it through the bag that has consistent, you know, mesh all the way around, so you get nice fine particulate that doesn't have a lot to separate, right? Also, too, if you look at the top here, before I pour it out, you know, the Huron H70 did make more air bubbles into the juice because with the vacuum juicing, we removed the air before processing, and in the squeezing process, we did add a little bit of air back in. You know, so these are 2 measures that I want you guys to be aware of. The deeper, darker color is more nutrition in this case, absolutely. So next up, let's go ahead and get 2 measuring cups so you guys could easily see the differences in yield. All right, first up, we're going to go ahead and pour the vacuum juice. Really nice texture, guys. As you guys can see, 6, 7, 8, 900 milliliters without a problem. All right, next up, let's go ahead and pour the Huram juice. I'll try to swish this around a little bit. And we're going to pour it up. All right. 200, 300, 400, 500, 600. We're petering out, guys. 700. All right. We're done. All right. Let's go ahead and do a close-up of both of the juices. All right, guys. Let's go ahead and do a close-up on the juices. Over on the vacuum juicing side, you guys could see straight up we got about 900 milliliters of juice. Also, I want you guys to look at the texture of the juice. This is a very fine texture. Small particulate in the juice, deep, rich, dark color, right? Next, over to the Huram, right? Oh, and then also, too, look at the air bubbles on top. You know, there's a very small layer of air bubbles on the top. Over to the Huram juice now. First up, I want to look at the amount of juice. I'm going to call that about 720 milliliters of juice. So definitely made less than the vacuum juicing, which has a much more consistent, deeper color. And yes, look at the color on this. The color of this is a lot lighter, and also look at all the different particle sizes in there. You know, I'm not going to debate whether that's good or bad. It is what it is. That's how this machine works. You know, it's just basically, you're not getting consistent particles. You're getting some, but not all. I mean, on some levels that could be good, but you know, which one would you rather drink, right? Deeper, richer, consistent coloring. I mean, look, I could do a close-up on that. It's just deep and rich. This one is, you know, has more particulate in there, which you know, in different sizes of particulate. So it's causing more separation. Also, of course, if we look at the foam layer, there's a, you know, a taller foam layer with bigger bubbles, means more aeration in your juice. That's the foam layer, once again, on the Huram H70. And then over on the vacuum juicing, definitely less of a foam layer with less air bubbles. That's going to minimally impact the quality of juice, especially during storage, okay? So yeah, that is the difference you get between vacuum juicing versus slow juicing. All right, guys, so what did you guys think of the juices, right? The more congealed, deeper color, or more, you know, a little bit more separation on that. Once again, I'm not going to declare separation as bad. It could be a good thing. But what I think is more important than how the juices look is actually how the juices taste. I wish I was a super taster like my ex-girlfriend, Nobily, who is no longer with us on the planet, unfortunately. I wish she was here to tell you guys more descriptively the difference in taste, but I'm just going to go ahead and use my refined juice taste buds to taste the differences. First up, we're going to taste the Huram juice. And I will say that I mostly drink Huram juice myself because I use the Huram juicer the most. And actually, I personally rarely vacuum juice due to all the labor involved. Although I'm giving up 25% of the juice. That's how much more juice vacuum juicing made, was 25% more juice. And it got the pulp, of course, 3 times drier. And of course, a lot more broken down. Okay. So let's go ahead and sample the Huram H70 juice. I mean, that's a good juice. Texture's good. It's not like hit me in the face or nothing. It's just juice. Definitely tastes of lemon. I think I'm tasting some of the celery. Kind of has some bitter overtones in it. Yeah. Let's go ahead and compare it now to the vacuum juice, see if this tastes any significantly different. All right, to your health. Wow. So for me personally, this is like a much, I would describe it as a more mellow juice, right? It's not quite as hard. I don't know. Some of you guys might understand that, some of you guys won't. To me, this juice also tastes more like, I don't want to say the word vibrant. I would say the word maybe like easy water, if some of you guys know what that is. It's more bouncy on the tongue. I don't know. Let me go ahead and try this one again. This one's more hard. Yeah. This one's more hard, a little bit more astringent. And then if we taste this one, This one's way more soft, guys. I think it's the flavors are enhanced, maybe some of the polyphenol oxidase enzymatic reaction happening on this side. I'm not really sure, but I mean, I'm gonna tell you guys from a taste perspective, I mean, no doubt for me personally, although you guys should do this test yourself, for me personally, this juice tastes superior than the Huram H70. Now, yes, you're thinking, John, why do you use a Huram H70 and you barely vacuum juice? Because I juice a lot, guys. I'll sit and juice like 8 quarts at once. I'm not going to sit there 8 quarts. I mean, we barely made 900 milliliters. If I had to do this 8 times, how much time? This thing, for 900 milliliters, took me like 13 minutes. If I had to repeat this process and squeeze out pulp 8 times and make this much juice, that'd be like over an hour and a half, right? I could be done juicing and clean in a minute, right? With the Huram H70, yes, I make 25% less, but that's what I choose to use, right? I'm not going to tell you guys what you should do. I'm going to tell you guys, if you guys are lazy and don't want to spend all the time, then the Huram H70 is for you. If you guys are hardcore and maybe you guys don't want to bulk juice, you just want to juice enough for the day, do it a few times a week, and you want the maximum yield, maximum nutrition, the best flavor, the driest pulp, then you want a vacuum juice, right? I'm just leaving it to you. That summary that we'll throw up, that I put up in the beginning, at the end, you guys could see my graph that I compare the pros and cons of each method. And in this episode, I've proved it by sharing with you guys the differences it makes by not only 25% more juice, a 3 times drier pulp, a better tasting juice, but yes, you don't get something for nothing. It was a hands-on experience, wringing out the juice, cutting everything small, taking more time. But that's what I want to leave you guys with. I want to leave you guys with the gift of knowledge so that you guys have the full information so you can make an informed decision to find out which one is right for you, right? If you think, oh, John, I'm never going to do that, right? Then, yeah, I would say go for the Huram H70 because this juicer, of all the different vertical juicers that have a hopper out there, make it the easiest because it's the easiest to clean. I am looking forward to cleaning, actually, the Huram H70 more than the bag. That will take some scrubbing out, and the blender carafe, which is easy to clean, but the bag will take a little bit longer, and I just got to literally spray down the parts on the Huram. So, looking forward to this, not looking forward to the cleanup of the bag specifically, all right? So, there you guys have it. You know, no matter which method of juicing you want to do, I'm here to hook you guys up with the best discount so you guys could get this equipment at the lowest price. So, if you guys want to buy the Huram and have juicing easy, make a little bit less yield, but have the easiest cleanup and free up your time to do other more important things in your life, make sure you guys use the coupon code EZJUICE, that's letter E, letter Z, juice at Huram.com. That'll save you guys a minimum of 10% off the Huram juicer, the H70 or other models. The H70 is my favorite one at this time and the best one that I've tested. Of course, if you guys want to do the vacuum blending solution, the most critical point for that is you will want to get the Alexis bags coming in a 2-pack at alexisbags.com. Link is down below this video. And of course, you will want to pick up a Blendtec blender. Maybe links down below to my Amazon shop where you guys could pick up a Blendtec blender. That being said, I would recommend you guys pick up a good used motor base with under 1,000 cycles on your favorite used website near you. And also but you want to get a brand new wild side carafe that has new seals and never use blade assembly. And then you want to pick up the Void Systems lid. You guys could use a coupon code DJ25 for a $25 off discount on the Void Systems lid so that you can turn your Blendtec blender into a vacuum blender. Void also makes kits for the Vitamix, but the Vitamix kit will come with their carafe, which is a much smaller carafe than the wild side carafe that goes up to basically 90 odd ounces that you could fit in there. And under vacuum juicing, the more you could fit in the container, the more juice you can make in one fall swoop, all right? So yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode, learning the difference between the best slow juicer and the best way to juice, vacuum juicing in 2025. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please be sure to give this video a big thumbs up. Also, more importantly, share this with other people that are into juicing so that they could learn about vacuum juicing as an option to juice if you want to put in the time and effort to make the most juice with the least amount of money, the driest pulp, and the best tasting juice in this comparison, in my personal opinion. Also, be sure to click that subscribe button right down below so you don't miss out on my new upcoming episodes. I'm coming every 5 to 7 days. You never know what new juicers I'll be unboxing, what new juicers I'll be comparing, or other vacuum blenders I'll be sharing with you guys, or juicing knowledge bombs I'll be dropping on you so you guys can enhance your juicing experience. Make sure you click the little bell so you're notified as my videos come out, and finally be sure to check past episodes. Past episodes are a wealth of knowledge. Over 800 episodes at this time on the channel dedicated to teach you guys all about juicing and other equipment that could allow you to process your fruits and vegetables in the best ways possible. I'll put a couple links down below to some of my favorite videos I made in the past about vacuum juicing so you guys can learn the specific techniques that you will need to do, as well as my favorite videos on the Huram H70, which is the easiest juicer to clean and the one I use most in my home these days when I'm not vacuum juicing. So with that, my name is John Kohler with DiscountJuicers.com. Be sure to visit DiscountJuicers.com/YouTube for special promotional offers for YouTube visitors.